Ladies, can I have your attention? It's time for me to introduce our first speaker. But before I introduce her, we have a little video to show you of some of the stuff that she's got up to in the past. And I want to particularly draw your attention to looking at the face of the captain of the other side and the face plant, okay? May I suggest you all turn your chair if you are not in a comfortable position right now? And may I also ask you, before we show the video, if you haven't yet bought a raffle ticket, will you please raise your hand and the people who are selling them will come to you. Will you just raise your hand now and wave it? Yep, there's a big table over there at the back. Will someone go to the table at the back? Thank you. And there's one down here, waving by the wall. Thank you. Ooh, and loads of them over here in the corner. Okay? Terrific. Okay, if you're all sitting comfortably, then we'll begin.
And a sizable crowd watched a compelling encounter between the two best sides in the world. New Zealand took an early lead through the boot of Rebecca Marnie, but the hosts came back strongly, skipper Kathryn Spencer on her 50th appearance, scoring what turned out to be the only try of the match, as England went into the break 7-3 ahead.
They put us under pressure. We definitely had our chances. We had so much attack. I guess the difference is just sort of match for speed is a little bit something that we're not used to. So the clear overlaps weren't there. We couldn't quite make the most of them.
We just had a job to do, and it was another game that we had to play, another game that we had to win. You know, enjoyed the stadium. It was fantastic to play here. When we're out on the pitch, it's just another bit of grass and you know, some white lines, and we had to hit the people in front of us. But as soon as the whistle went at the end, it was time to sort of save the moment again, and we most certainly did.
This moment. And we're lucky enough to have with us today 63 caps she's won for her country. May I ask you all to welcome Kathryn Spencer to tell us what she's doing now.
Thank you very much. Hopefully that's woken up everyone after lunch there. It's nice to be able to stand on stage and not wear rugby kit and have my hair everywhere and look particularly scruffy. I always think maybe I should have played a more photogenic sport, but rugby was a sport for me, so there you go. I brought my phone up with me just to keep an idea on the time. I think I've got 10 minutes, so if I get to 40 minutes, just start throwing bread buns at me or something like that, and I shall stop talking. So, yeah, how did I end up at Twickenham scoring a try on my 50th cap for England? To put that into perspective, actually, we were playing New Zealand women there, the Black Ferns. That was back in 2009, and they'd never lost a game since 2001. So that's why we were a little bit happy after the end of that game. Frustratingly, they are the world champions again, but there you go. So where did I start, really? Because I know I don't look over 21, but I started playing rugby back in the 80s, in the mid-80s. I played mini rugby. I've got two brothers, older brother and a twin brother. And I tried ballet. I went to ballet for about 5 weeks. And basically that was a disaster. And I went horse riding, really enjoyed it, got a bit pricey. But my twin brother was up at my local club on a Sunday morning, running around in the mud. And that is exactly where I wanted to be. My family were really supportive. And so off I trotted on a Sunday morning, played in this team, no other girls playing, not many girls playing in Kent, not many girls playing in the country at that point, but I absolutely loved it. I've only got 10 minutes. I won't tell you about all the awards I won because we wouldn't have enough time, but there's one particular award that I won that I am really, really proud of, and I still have it now, taped up with sellotape to keep it together. And it was Kathryn Spencer age 11, most improved rugby player, Folkestone Mini Rugby Club. I was like, wow. And my coach, a guy called Mike O'Sullivan, who I'm still in contact with now, really had to fought my corner for that, fight my corner, because the people at the club, they're like, what's the point? What is the point of giving that award to a girl? And I know, thanks for those sound effects. But they did, and I got that award, and it just gave me that extra bit of boost, that extra bit of confidence that I needed. They're a really supportive club now, and my England shirt is up on the wall at Folkestone Rugby Club. But back then, I had no idea that an England team for women existed. It wasn't on the television much, it wasn't really in the news. I had no idea it existed. And because of that, I kind of describe my rugby career, if you like, as a series of blind summits. Now, you all look like you go mountaineering on a regular basis, so you'll understand what I'm talking about. You know, you're walking up a mountain, and you think, oh, there's the top. Brilliant. Oh, it's not the top. You thought you got to the top. There's another summit. Okay, I can get there, I can get there. You get to the top. Oh, it's not the top. And there's another one, and another one. My rugby career was like that. So my first little summit was playing rugby. When I was 11, I had to stop playing rugby. Rugby is a contact sport, as you saw on the telly. Girls and boys couldn't play in the same team at that age. When I go to schools and talk to kids, I always say the official reason is that girls are better than boys, and we show them up if we carried on playing in the same team. Boys are okay at rugby as well, but girls are good. Anyway, so I had to stop playing rugby, but my local club, Folkestone, started a women's team when I was 14, and there were no age regulations, so I played women's rugby from the age of 14, played my last game of rugby last August. And that was kind of my next step, playing club rugby, and I absolutely loved it, loved playing for my club, Folkestone. And then one evening I was at home with my parents, and the phone rang. One of the dialy phones, no mobile around at that point. We were sat in the living room watching TV with just 4 channels on it. How crazy is that? Anyway, that's by the by. My coach phoned me up, and he was like, Catherine, I want you to go to Kent Trials. Wow. I went to Kent Trials, and I got in, and I played rugby for my county. I thought that was it. I thought that was my Everest. And I was really proud of playing for my county. But when I was there, I was like, oh, there's regional rugby. And I thought, I can be there. You know, watching the people that were there, watching the game, I can do that. By seeing it, I thought, I can do that. So I played regional rugby. I went to university, and we had a pretty good women's rugby team. Most universities, even back then, this was late 90s now, had a women's rugby team. I went to Cardiff University, best university in the world. Anyone else went to Cardiff? Brilliant university. Yes. Brilliant university. I did do a degree, but I played a lot of rugby there as well, and absolutely loved it. The first time I played at Twickenham. So for those of you not completely versed in the religion that is rugby, so rugby is our religion, Twickenham is our cathedral. It's the best ground in the world. That was the game we played on the video. The first time I played at Twickenham was with my university team. And running out of the tunnel onto the hallowed turf was incredible, in front of about 6 people watching, because it was a women's game. But it was just this amazing moment, and little did I know I'd be back a few times playing there again. That was like another step on my trek up my mountain. I went off travelling for a year, and I didn't play rugby in that time. But it was during that year I thought, do you know what? I think I can get to that next step. I'd started to hear and see about this England women's rugby team. You know, I played club, I played county, played regional, did pretty well at university rugby. I think I can get just to the next level. Came back from travelling. I didn't do a lot of sport or fitness, and I have to admit I drank a bit too much alcohol and ate a few too many pies on my year away. However, I came back via India and lost quite a lot of weight, so I looked all right when I turned up at trials, and I just scraped through, and I got into these summer training days, and I went there, but I was really scared. I was just Catherine from Folkestone. You know, what was I doing there with all these kind of England-type players? You know, we've all heard of imposter syndrome, haven't we, and kind of feeling like a fraud. That's a bit what I felt like. But something kept me going. Something was like, yes, Catherine, you can do this. And I'll whiz on a little bit more because I'm conscious of the time. And, you know, I kept in the setup, I kept training hard, and in 2004, I got my first England cap. And we were playing in the Six Nations. Some of you will have heard of it. It's a tournament that's happening at the moment. and we were playing Wales. Have we got any Welsh people in here? There's always some, isn't there, honestly? So we were playing Wales in the Six Nations, and I was on the subs bench, being called up to England. The player in my position, Claire Frost, had got injured. Someone's misfortune is someone else's opportunity, and that certainly was my opportunity. But I was on the subs bench, and we played our first half, and sorry Welshies, we were winning by quite a lot. That's what we used to do against Wales, and quite regularly. And we were winning quite well, and it got to half-time, and I was enjoying watching this game of rugby. My parents were in the stands, and then about 20 minutes into the second half, my name was called, and I'll never ever forget it. And I was stood at the side of the pitch, had my white England shorts, my white England shirt with a red rose on my chest, and I was called onto the pitch. And I ran onto the pitch, and over in my head was going, you're representing your country. You're playing rugby for England. And it was like the world had gone into slow motion. Probably looked like it, I'm not a very fast runner, but the world had gone into slow motion. I just over and over in my head, you're playing rugby for your country. You're representing England. And it was incredible. I played the game, and I scored a little sneaky try. It's a bit like, how you score a goal. And I was on such a high. And I went home. I was living back at my parents'. I have moved out now, age 38, which is good. I was living back at my parents', and the next day, me and my dad went round to all my coaches from Folkestone, from Minis, from club to county, and gave them a gift because it was for them. I wouldn't have got to play for England if it wasn't for them. I wouldn't have moved up yet to another Blind Summit if it wasn't for all these people, and the people in my team, if you like. And also it gave my dad an excuse to just tell even more people about what his little baby girl had done. He came to watch the video, so the video you watched there was my 50th cap for England, and a really proud moment for me, but also for the team because of the significance of the game. And it was televised live, and we had record-breaking crowd at that time coming to watch a women's game, and I was awarded Player of the Match. And my dad said afterwards, he was stood near these couple of guys who just stood having a drink at the bar, and they said, yeah, that England captain's done all right, hasn't she? Captain, only try of the game, 50th cap, beating New Zealand, player of the game. And my dad said he didn't say anything. He just stood there with a smile on his face, and yeah, that's my baby cow. And proud parents. And I'll tell them. I'll tell my dad later he got a clap. He'll be pleased with that. And anyway, so I carried on playing rugby for another couple of years, and then we got to the World Cup in 2010. We played in 2006. We lost to New Zealand in the World Cup final. In 2010 was the next World Cup, and I was captain. I was England captain. The World Cup was on home soil. Everything we were doing for 4 years, absolutely everything. Getting up on a really cold, freezing morning at 6 o'clock in the morning to go and sprint up and down a rugby pitch. To get up 6 o'clock the next day to go and do strength training before going to work. I was not paid to play rugby for England, unlike my male counterparts. I did it because I wanted to play rugby for England and be the best person in my position. And I did it because we wanted to win a World Cup. So in 2010, got to the World Cup final against New Zealand. And we lost. We lost by 3 points. Absolutely gutted. I'll never, ever get over it. I'm okay on a daily basis now, it's okay. It's fine. Really, really tough. Everything we were doing and building was about winning that World Cup final, and we lost. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And then after the World Cup final, I just wanted to find my mum. I just wanted to have a cup of tea and a hug, and I had to face this press conference. For years, we'd been building our profile, slowly but surely building the profile of women's sport, of women's rugby. At that point, I wish we hadn't. I didn't want these cameras and journalists facing me, but we came out of that really well. And one of the big reasons we did come out of that so well as ambassadors of our sport, if you like, ambassadors of women's sport, of women's rugby, because we were ordinary people doing something quite extraordinary. And people got behind us because of that reason. We were mums, we were sisters, we were girlfriends, we were wives, we were nurses, we were vets. That's pretty extraordinary, but, we were office managers, we were students, we were just ordinary people doing something extraordinary. I made the decision to retire in 2011, a really difficult decision. I played in 2 World Cup finals, hadn't won a World Cup. But I thought the next World Cup in 2014, I was 35 then, and it was a huge commitment, but I wanted to retire while I was still on a high, when I was still the best number 8 in England and some would say the world. I wanted to retire when I was on a high as an individual. I didn't want to be deselected. I didn't want to get injured. And also the shirts were getting so much more fitted. I didn't want to... that was the real reason it was time to go. And then after that, you know, it's really, joking aside, retirement is a very tough thing to do, or some of you will have different transitions in your life, moving from one thing to another. You may have been in one business and now you're going off to do something else. You kind of lose this identity. You know, what do? You have all this life set for you. You know exactly what your goals are, and then you have to set your own goals. And it was a really difficult time for me. And, you know, I talked to you about, you know, trekking up this mountain. I'd got to the top of this mountain. I thought I've retired. I've got to crash all the way to the bottom. No way. I woke up one morning and realised I can stay at the top of the mountain range. That's absolutely fine. I've built this life. I've built this profile. I can just hop over to another mountain. I've set myself different goals. So I set up my own business. I was in a very secure job. I had a salary, a monthly salary, amazing. I had a company car, sick pay, pension, all that kind of thing. And one day I thought, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I set up my own company called Inspiring Women, which is a speaker agency. I was going to lots of events, a bit like this one, but with mainly men in them, rugby events. And all these speakers, really good speakers, but they were all male. And now I know there's females that have got good stories to tell. I know there are, and I wanted to set up a platform for that, to provide that platform, but also to encourage fellow female athletes and former athletes that you have got a story to tell and you have got a value and people do want to listen to you. That's why I set up Inspiring Women, and really proud of my business. I also do quite a lot of commentary work, media work. I've been commentating on the Six Nations. I'm patron of a charity, Tag Rugby Trust. We've recently set up a project in Zimbabwe to develop female leaders and mentors who are working with young girls growing up in Zimbabwe as well, which is a fantastic charity. And just to put a heinous plug in, I'm writing my own book at the moment called Mud, Maul, Mascara. So you can play rugby and be muddy and like to put mascara on as well. There's more to the book than that. That's just the thing. And there's a little card in your goodie bags, and I'm crowdfunding for the cost of publishing at the moment. So if you'd like to hear more, if you'd like to read more, you can just look at that. But enjoy the rest of the lunch, enjoy the rest of the amazing speakers that are coming, and celebrate who we are, celebrate what people did 100 years ago. I think they had their own journey of blind summits as well. 100 years ago, we won the vote. I don't know if they would have known we'd had a female Prime Minister now. And I'm sure they didn't know that women would be playing rugby in World Cups. So. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening.
That was just fantastic. Thanks so much. I think the spread of speakers today is, we've never had such a range. I mean, if you can't identify with one of them at least, I'm sorry, it's not their fault. And so thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing all that stuff. And now we have our second speaker, Elizabeth Hartley Brewer, who I met not very long while ago at a drinks party with some very dear friends. And I thought, well, when I was being brought up, it was very easy. If you made a mistake, you could say, well, it's all my mother's fault. It was all my father's fault. It was the fashion. You could say it, and you can get away with it too. But she's written a book now about how you can raise children with self-esteem, which has run into more than 1 million copies sold and has been translated into 12 languages, Chinese and Thai. So all of you who've ever had parents, and all of you who think you might be one time or whatever, enjoy listening to Elizabeth Hartley Brewer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. I think I'm going to read because I've been sitting very intimidatedly at a table with people who teach public speaking, and you know, I'm a writer, I'm not a public presenter, but and I also want to make sure I cover things and so on. So I will go very fast, yeah. So I mean, today is a fantastic celebration of what women can achieve when we set our minds to something, and it's usually against the odds, isn't it? It's also a reminder, though, through the wonderful work of WOW, and I would like to focus on the first W there, the well-being, that actually the search for success in our society now can sometimes come at a price. And the search for success for some of our young people today doesn't actually guarantee well-being, but seems to be creating a deep well of self-uncertainty, which the worrying mental health statistics really indicate. And I'm sorry to kind of bring it down a little bit, but I think it's so important and I'm passionate about it. And part of this, the self-uncertainty that young women and young girls are experiencing now is due, I believe, to the misunderstandings about the terms success and failure, or achievement and mistakes, if you want to kind of lighten it a bit. I'll explore this shortly, but I also want to cover a few parenting tips. But if I run out of time, there's lots of books out there for sale, and you can buy them there and read them all. So this is all in my 10 minutes, which is not so much a Herculean task as a Boadicеan task. So I'm going to jump in my chariot and rush on. So focusing on girls' self-esteem, as I have done for many years, I see women and girls having many strengths, but also some vulnerabilities. Most of these vulnerabilities are the flip sides of their strengths. So it's not such bad news, and it actually means that it's not so difficult to do something about it. The good things about girls is that, and by the way, I do see very clear differences between girls and boys growing up in the generalities. They learn differently, they play differently, they behave differently, they even think differently. Girls, just focusing on girls, because today, are typically diligent and dogged. They like to please, though sometimes they can lose sight of themselves in trying to please everybody else. You know, they're left with a bit of emptiness. They're more emotionally literate and empathic than boys and can use their better oral skills to express their feelings, explain, understand, and read people. They're typically more organized than boys. Those of you with sons will know that. And they can be loving friends, very thoughtful and very generous. Mind you, they're also able to use some of these talents to wheedle, pester, manipulate, especially their dads, and to earn the labels witches and bitches. Girls fight with words, one 9-year-old boy said to me when I was doing some research. So girls' key vulnerability is self-doubt, never quite believing they're good enough. That's often actually why they work so hard, because they just don't ever think that, you know, they have to pull out go that extra mile. And it's also why they're so sensitive to friendships, to how they look, and so easily destabilized by social media. I always see girls as like sandcastles. They start off strong, beautiful, proud, they're bedecked with shells, and then the waves of self-doubt start coming up the seashore, chipping away at their base and undermining them, and can even leave them kind of flat. It's possible, I mean, we do rebuild later. But actually, some of that we never quite lose. As mature women, we can be self-effacing. We don't like to brag. We give ourselves a lot of negative self-talk. We often don't push ourselves. I know a biology teacher who became head of science at a prestigious independent boys' public school in London. The overall head visited her department, yes, she was a woman, to thank them all for their good work for raising the recent exam results. She replied for all of her department, but, oh, we were just doing our job. No need to thank us. Really pleased the children did so well. And her mostly male colleagues were furious with her. They complained after, why did you say that? We worked especially hard last year, as the head asked us to. We're proud of these results and pleased that the head noticed us and praised us. She told me that story, and she saw it as hugely significant and as a negative comment on herself. So the men wanted their success acknowledged. Now, success and failure are not separate and opposites, and it's not helpful, in my view, to laud success and ignore or shirk failures or even see them as shameful. Both are merely outcomes that show that we got something right or what we've still got to learn. And I think that's really important for dealing with things at home. And not only are success and failure closely linked, but one often leads to the other. Indeed, success comes from 90% failure is one of the famous sayings of Mr. Honda. And you know where he ended up. And failure and making mistakes are essential to learning. And whilst failure certainly lights the route to success, we can forget that success can very easily lead to failure the other way around, through feeling too much pressure to keep it up, or burnout and self-handicapping from an unhealthy perfectionism. And I'm very, very worried, actually, about the focus on exam results and, learning in schools, and how girls, need to be perfect and beautiful, they need to, look great, etc. So, the most helpful thing for children is the notion, I believe, of good enough success. We know about good enough parents, don't we? Well, good enough success is also very good. A child has to know they're good enough, then good enough as they are, yet they still have more to give when they are ready, not when they're pushed to be ready. I can illustrate this link from bad to good, from mistakes to achievement, from my own life. When my first long marriage failed, actually I called it a finished marriage. It was much better notion and actually quite correct. At the same time as my mother died, I fell to pieces. I was on the floor. However, after a short while, being free of both, and they were both quite difficult characters, it freed me, created the space in my head for ideas to flow, and that's when my writing and professional career really took off, and I was 50 years old. It's never too late. Another failure that will probably surprise you was doing less than a great job on parenting my daughter, my second child. She was such a different ball game to my first one, the son, who was so easy. And I realised I had to figure out another way. I'd already realised that self-esteem explains an awful lot of how we behave and how we relate to each other. So I thought about how I could try to encourage her own self-esteem. I tried some things out on her, and I saw the difference when I acted one way rather than another. She was like Jekyll and Hyde. It was the most extraordinary evidence that I could have followed. So I put that into my first book. Now, thereby hangs a tale, because actually there's 8 now. I also drew on my experiences of being a step-parent of 2 little ones at the age of 21. That was certainly a tough assignment, and I've never forgotten those lessons. So what have I learned through this? Well, through adversity comes opportunity and new strength. If there's a crack in the door, have the confidence to push it open. It's okay to make mistakes, and for children too, that's very important. As parents, we make hundreds of them, by the way, thousands of them. I was very gratified to read once that a good enough parent is somebody who gets it right only 25% of the time. That's a good enough parent, so don't lose heart, because we all say the wrong things at the wrong time, regret it bitterly, but that's life, and we can make amends, we can apologise. Don't take failures or challenges from partners, bosses, friends or children personally, and certainly don't beat yourself up about them. It's usually the other person's problem that they're trying to stick on you. Your children too. There's a story. My daughter came home from school one day, 6 years old. She walked into the house. She was so rude, used vocabulary, language that I'd never heard her speak before. And part of me wanted to just absolutely explode. Another part of me thought, where's she got this from? It must have been the playground. So I said, I think someone's been really horrible to you today. She threw her arms around me and burst into tears. Thank goodness you've understood, Mum. So just be careful about that instant self-protection and self-defense. And the last point from this bit is, when you know you've done well, praise yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you you've done it before you'll believe it. Now, some of the keys to building confidence and self-esteem in your children, I've got on 2 charts here that I'm going to read through very quickly. These same charts are on the book desk over there that you can take a screenshot of if you want to, remember them and so on. So if you want your daughter to be confident, demonstrate your confidence in her, hear her point of view and respect it. Repeat endlessly that it's who she is inside that matters, not superficial looks. Take her out and about for experience. Don't make her fulfill your dreams. Help her to take risks. Reward good time management rather than performance. Don't tease her about her insecurities, and allow her to be different from you and let her be naughty. It's only when children are naughty that they find out, when actually what's allowed, what's not allowed. It's all part of exploring where the boundaries are. I dare say I'm going on, so I've got some other points about strengthening their self-belief and identity, but it's all out there. I would focus Well, support and encourage, don't control and push. Supporting a child is when you are like a column on a building. You're sharing some of their burden. And encouraging, the word encourage comes from the French word cœur. And so it's giving them heart. And controlling and pushing by sort of threats and things only is basically saying, I don't think you're going to manage this without my input. That can't possibly increase their self-belief. Don't play power. For every power statement, there's a payback. They get to learn. Every child, even little ones, have their own sort of sources of strength, and they will play it back. The more you use it, the more you'll lose it. And we should try to use our authority. A great phrase I always used to use is that, do you know what? I'm your mum, your parent, and this is my job, and it's my job to decide things like this. Another tip is never use more than 2 reasons for doing something. Actually, 1 will do, but no more than 2, because if you start using more, then they will see that as something to argue about. You're giving them more to hook into, and then it can end up a messy negotiation, and you've lost completely. Okay, so I will rush on. So we've had plenty of tips that relate to either a kind of an office adult situation, or they can be referred to the family situation. I think it's really important to say you have to love them for who they are, not for what they can do. As with discipline, we always know, don't we? It's kind of the first thing you ever learn as a parent. You separate the child from their behaviour. You say, I love you, but I don't like what you're doing. The same is true of praise and what they're doing. You love them for who they are, and you appreciate and value them also for what they can do. But if a child grows up feeling that they are absolutely brilliant, this isn't really what self-esteem is about. So to summarise about what I see as a healthy, positive self-esteem is not being told constantly and thinking that you're brilliant, or owning, wearing, or being surrounded by things that make you feel good about yourself for the moment, because the fashion's going to change. And it's not about things at all. It's actually having a balanced understanding of your strengths and limitations, knowing who you are and liking enough of yourself to face the world as you are without pretense. So in conclusion, we want our daughters to have both the imagination to dream and the determination to reach their goals, especially to become mistresses of their own destiny. Today, actually, we also must enable them to talk back, even to us sometimes, and to stand up for themselves. It's a tough world out there that they're going into. We need to encourage a positive self-talk and ultimately the confidence to believe that there's nothing out there that I can't crack. Thank you.
Plenty of food for thought there. I'm just checking down the list there. Okay. Well, now we come to something rather shocking. And it's to do with our next speaker. Shocking. Jo Elvin, who you'll all know, famous for her work as an editor at Glamour magazine. And I thought, yes, now gone on to you, but I haven't ever listened to her podcast. So I thought I'd just tune in and listen to a few. I had such a problem. My main problem was my iPhone kept saying, restricted listening. You have got to remove your adult restrictions from your phone before you can listen to it. It was shocking stuff. And so here to give you a few shocks is Jo. Welcome her, please.
What an intro. I feel like one of those X-rated rappers now. Yeah, it's like... I'm not going to say, I don't think I'm going to say any swear words today. I thought you were going to ask me to strip or something then. And I just want to say thank you to the 2 speakers we've heard so far. People who write books, Elizabeth, you know, considering I have to pretty much have a gun held to my head to write 200 words for an editor's letter very regularly. And as inspiring as you were, Catherine, I couldn't help being hurtled back to the time as an Australian child. There's nothing worse being an Australian child who people fight to not have on their sports team. That's sort of like the scarring memories. Imagine being Australian and not good at sport. I couldn't throw a ball. I don't tan. I had to leave. They asked me to. But I am Australian. Some people hear it straight away. Some people don't at all. It depends on how much wine I've had. I've got to go back and edit a weekly. I have not had one drop of wine. So, but if you know, the drunker I get, the more twangy I get. But yes, I think I've lived more of my life here now. More of my life in London than Australia. I live here with my husband and my daughter. But it was always something that I wanted to do. I wanted to work in media in the UK. I think that it's kind of the law. When you're Australian, you're just born with this wanderlust. It's so far away. You've got nice beaches, but they're nowhere near anything else. And you just feel like you've got to go and see what the hell else is out there. Now, couple that with, you know, the love of British press that I had. People sort of like love to hear, if they say, why did you want to be a journalist? People love to hear an answer like, oh, you know, I wanted to speak truth to power. I wanted to expose great stories. I wanted to go around the world and do really meaningful things. I just, you know, the truth for me is I was a very hormonal, kind of like lonely teenage girl, and I just wanted to meet pop stars. Honest to God, that's, I'm not even like trying to make you laugh. That's the truth. And I used to sit in my room listening to my Smiths albums and my Duran Duran and my Spandau Ballet and obsessing over all the British pop mags that I had to have to sort of like, you know, fuel this obsession. And it was when I started reading the bylines of people who would do things like go to the Great Wall of China with Wham, or go touring somewhere with Spandau Ballet. There's a lot of people here who won't know what those words are, but they were pop bands. And I was actually, you know, I was a good English student. I was good at writing. I was good at creative fiction, so which is obviously, possibly, some people think is very handy for journalism. And once I sort of like had that light bulb moment, if I could combine my writing skills and with a job where you meet pop stars, I mean, that was it. That was all I wanted to do. So I spent a lot of time, sort of like 15, 16 years old, doing a lot of work experience at local papers, and phoning Dolly magazine, which was the teenage Bible at the time. Just pretty much every week they said, please go away until you're 18. So it was like 18, 19, I started phoning obsessively, until they finally let me go and do some work experience there when I was at university. And that was fantastic. I used to answer the phones and open the Post and all of those things. And I think my big break probably came there when the features team there was sort of staging a bit of a coup. They'd decided that the editor wasn't very good, and they'd gone to management to complain about her, and that went about as well for them as you might imagine that it would. And so it was sort of out of default necessity, I kind of like sat in a chair while I was, and didn't really leave. I'd been at university. I rearranged all my university classes so that I could do 2 days a week at Dolly magazine. And I think for some of you here, you won't understand what I say when this was the time before Google. And I'm trying to give you a really quick potted history of my career, but you know, I'm at the age now where there's a lot of the past, but I'll try and speed it up. But I remember they asked me to find some ranch girls from cattle stations around the country, young, pretty girls who did, you know, the boys' jobs. And that wasn't a matter of sort of like Googling girls on ranches, which would obviously sort of like bring up a completely different kind of thing these days. But it was sitting with all the Australian state phone books, this big, looking up cattle ranches. Hi, have you got any girls? What do they look like? Kind of weird in a post-Me Too world, but that was my job. So in that almost like that Devil Wears Prada moment where she brings in the 2 unpublished volumes of Harry Potter to Miranda Priestley, I was able to give a selection of girls to the editor. And that impressed them enough to ask them to, you know, they gave me an internship, and that's kind of where my career started. And there's a point to telling you that story. There's a bit of a theme in what I think has meant that I've kind of survived in this industry as long as I have, which I will get to. But Dolly magazine really was the dream job. I used to do crazy things like learn how to surf. Couldn't do it. I used to, my editor rather cruelly reasoned that if anybody would sign me up as a model, then they were obviously a very dodgy model agency, so I was sent undercover to get a contract with a model agency. Yeah, so, you know, but I was keen. I'll do anything. I even interviewed teenage boys about their nuanced opinions about sex on the street in Vox Pops. That was fun. And so my first editor gave me that big break, and she also sent me to her hairdresser, which I'm always forever grateful for. When you're from Sydney, I grew up in the western suburbs, that makes me a Westie. Nobody talks about it. I had the big Charlene from Neighbours perm. I had sort of like, you know, clothes that you wouldn't light a match near. So it was almost like, again, pre-Devil Wears Prada, it was like that montage where suddenly they set me on this half-decent road to, you know, looking non-Westie, I guess. And I don't think I'd be standing here today if they had been polite about my perm. So I did that for a few years, and then I knew that I wanted to come to London. I knew, I think it's changed now, but you know, you were allowed to get a visa pretty easily in my day. But a job came up. A friend of mine was working at Channel 10, the TV station, and they needed a short-term contract publicist for, it's this little show called Neighbours. I don't know if you've heard of it. Does it get any more cliched than to be an Australian who worked at Neighbours? What I will say about Neighbours is it really taught me that I wanted to be a journalist. That was probably, I would rate that job below loading the dishwasher at Pizza Hut as sort of like, I just didn't like it. And I don't know, I didn't like sort of like sorting out everybody else's press, and it was rating really badly, and I had to get 2 stories in the paper every week about Neighbours, and I'm not joking, you know, the plot lines were things like, Helen's left the iron on, which I've obviously embellished a little bit, sorry. So as soon as I could, I legged it to London. It's the law to backpack when you're an Australian. And I did a lot of bar work and a lot of waitressing while I applied constantly for jobs. And in fact, the paper I work for today once referred to me in a story. It was a big picture of Alex Shulman, the editor of Vogue, and all her credentials. A big picture of Fiona McIntosh, the editor of Elle at the time, and all her credentials. A big picture of me, and it said, former barmaid Jo Elvin. And I just kind of thought, thanks for that mail on Sunday. Might have a word with somebody when I get back today. I mean, everybody's been a barmaid or a waitress, right? Come on. You know, and it was hard work. So from there, my first job in England was as the deputy editor of TV Hits. Very, very small team of half a dozen of us. So deputy editor, sound fantastic. I was also production editor, picture editor, toilet cleaner, editor's dog walker. But I learned everything there. So, you know, I sort of bluffed my way into that and learned so much so that I was the right person after my Dolly magazine experience. When the same company wanted to launch a magazine called Sugar, they made me the launch editor. So that was really, really exciting. And what we did was this grown-up values, like, you know, the hardback spine and like beautiful photography, but for a young audience. So we made Baby Cosmo. And that was a market leader at the time, and I'm still really proud of what a fun job that was and what a great time. From there, I launched B magazine for the same company, trickier market, sort of like not too young, not too old. That was fun until I got fired from that job. That was probably not such a fun day, but standing out in the corner with my box of possessions and the 20 quid they gave me for a taxi, and I remember thinking, I'm going to take this 20 quid for myself and get the tube. But I didn't get to the end of the street with the box, so I had to get a taxi. But then from there, I was kind of rescued a couple of months later by New Woman magazine. It was the real ladette magazine at the time. It was, you know, FHM was like the lad Bible, loaded and really sort of like defined lad culture at the time, and New Woman was the answer to that for females. It kind of, you know, don't judge me, it made sense at the time. It was when Zoe Ball used to run around with a bottle of scotch in one hand and some fags in the other. And this was her spiritual magazine. And I think I was there about 2 years before I got the call from Glamour magazine, from Condé Nast, and I'd always loved that magazine. It was a real dream to be asked if I wanted to launch that, and that's probably why I stayed there for nearly 18 years. I used to say I'm embarrassed not to be bored. Obviously, the media game has changed so much in that time. But wow, it was such a dream run. It was, market leader for a very, very long time, sort of made history being that small size that everybody told me wasn't going to work, and it shot out like a cannon. I don't take credit for that. That wasn't my idea, but I think that it was the real Sex and the City magazine at the time. It was like a time when women weren't embarrassed to want to love a pair of Manolos and lipstick as well as know what was going on in the Financial Times. And I think that was sort of like the level of empowerment that we'd reached, and I think Glamour really embraced that spirit. It was so much fun, and it really was that kind of dream that people tell you that your job's not glamorous, but I did used to find myself sipping cocktails in Donatella Versace's apartment in Milan, or I once got papped with Terry Hatcher in the Hollywood Hills. I was so excited, phoned the office and said, I'm going to be in these pictures. And by the time they got them in from the agency, I'd been airbrushed out of all of them. But it did happen, I once helped, I'm sure Amanda Holden loves me for telling this story, but at the Glamour Awards one year, she couldn't sit down to pee until I'd unzipped her out of her dress. So I helped to do that. And then there was the day that Amy Winehouse came in and did everybody's hair in the office. It was random. But I think the thing that I really loved about that job the most, in all seriousness, was obviously we all know that women's magazines, they have, they're easy to poke fun at. It's easy to say that they're shallow and they're frivolous and they're only concerned with fashion. But I cannot tell you the hundreds of letters I received every week, particularly if we did something on mental health or speaking about miscarriage or early menopause, and a lot of the things that I'm really proud of Tina for championing in well-being of women. That is such a privilege, and when I left Glamour, that's what I mourned the most, just that, sort of like I knew I would really miss that engagement with that reader. So it was really, really strange and really sad when it all ended, really quite abruptly last year after nearly 18 years, as I said. It was a business decision. The company has taken the magazine and the brand where they want to, and it was kind of, by mutual agreement, but with a heavy heart, I kind of realised I didn't want to run a digital-only brand. I didn't want to run a beauty-only brand. For all the reasons I've just said, that just wasn't going to be fulfilling for me. And I must admit, I've always been the kind of person for whom success, I haven't really ever had a plan. I loved your analogy about mountains, but I don't think I've ever really thought about the mountain. I think I've been much more about, well, if I just do this here and now, and I do the best I can, then something will come of it. So even though I kind of knew in my heart, you can't be the editor of Glamour when you're 65, you better have a plan, I didn't really have one. So it was kind of exciting, but also quite terrifying when suddenly I was standing at a cliff face going, okay, well, what now? And so that idea was really tested to the limit when I realised I would have to leap, that, it's okay not to have a plan. So there I was figuring it out as I went along, and being so invested in an identity for so long and then suddenly not having that identity, I'm sure many of you can relate, is really tough. We tell ourselves it's a bad idea not to get wrapped up, not to be editor of, not to be that label that the public sees you as. But it's just kind of what happens when you're doing that role, and if you're doing it well and embracing it and immersing yourself in it, that's what happens. So in the time that I wasn't working, I sort of spent a few months just trying to be, just to see what that was like. That was the plan. Just be. Just take each day at a time and relax. Well, relaxing is literally the worst effing thing I've ever had to try and do in my life. I'm worse at that than I am at sport. I tried, but I just found that I like activity. But it was really, really, what I did discover, it was really nice to have activity with no particular end goal, no, sort of like higher measure of success. And so that's why I did the kind of things that I wanted to do, like speaking like this or writing. And the thing that was the passion project was the disgraceful podcast that I do with my pod husband, James Williams. I like some men, and I really like James. And it's been rewarding, and it's been entertaining, and it's kept me off the streets. We didn't do it for money or really any other reason that we absolutely love doing it, and we've been amazed and we've been delighted that celebrities want to guest star on it. So we kept it going, and it's a hobby, and we're still doing it. And we've put a lot of love into it and lived in the here and now with it, and really unexpectedly, it is actually now looking like there's going to be some exciting opportunities for it going forward. But do you know what? Even if there isn't, I don't really care. We just like doing it. And if something great comes of it, well, happy days. But of course, the headline news at the moment is my huge new challenge in taking the editorship at the mighty You magazine at the Mail on Sunday. It was an opportunity that I couldn't believe came my way, and I couldn't pass it up. It's a magazine I've often looked at and thought, oh, I'd love to get my hands on that. I'd love to do something fun with that. And I think there's potential to do great and fun and important content in there. Sorry, I know some people don't like the word content, but that's what it is. Its reach, when you consider it's in a post-digital world of sort of like 2 million readers a week, is phenomenal. And it feels like a huge challenge and a huge responsibility and really exciting. And it's my second week, and I suspect it's going to be quite a few months before I look at it and feel like it's mine. I'm really filling some huge shoes before me in the great Sue Peart as well. But I'll approach it as I've done everything in my career, and that is what I can do today is the best that I can do. I'm not immune to worrying about whether I'm good enough or being depressed when things go wrong or being really annoyed when somebody gets the cover that I wanted and all of that and things don't turn out the way you hoped. But I do believe that if you give your all in the big and the tiny little incremental ways, that your work does reap rewards. It might not be even the goal that you thought you were setting out for, but good things happen when you stop looking at your shoulder and thinking, she's doing better than me, he's further up the ladder, why don't I have 2 children when she's got 3? You know, it's all of those things. But I think that if you focus on you and what you want to get out of today and what you can do today to make it the best for you, and just sort of like try to be really organic with that, then I honestly think that it's somehow, and even in unexpected ways, it reaps rewards. Rewards. So it's here and now. And the example I always think of is actually not about me. I employed on Glamour a few years ago a brilliant writer and features editor called Gemma Askham, who I emailed just this morning to say, please write for me in my new job. But she came to me, she applied for a job, she travelled down from the train from Peterborough. She was a writer on a really technical car magazine. She didn't know anything about cars before she started that job, but that was the job that she could get at the time. This was the best she could do today. I'm going to get this job. She threw herself into that job. She had portfolio after portfolio of unbelievably labour-intensive, boring guff about cars as far as I'm concerned. But you know, she thought, this is the job I can get. I'm going to throw myself into this. And she didn't know where that would lead. But when she came to see me, it led to me being so impressed that somebody would throw themselves into something that wasn't their thing at all and make the best of it. And I was like, I've got to rescue this girl. So it just goes to show that, to me, that's always the best example I can think of, that just do what you can now, and you'll be amazed at the doors you don't even know it's going to open for you yet. That's it. I'm probably gone slightly less than 10 minutes. I don't know. I asked Angela to lob a bread roll at me, but that's my message. Thank you.
I think that was, you'll agree, incredibly interesting and huge fun. And I'm very proud my phone's now freed up, and I'll be back on there listening to you and your husband again. Yeah, and talk about girls taking their tops off and being a prude. Yeah, all that stuff. Well, it certainly has been a grand mix of people, hasn't it? And now we come to our last speaker. And a lot of you may not have heard the name Dr. Margaret Heffernan. For me, she's always been someone I've regarded with huge respect. To me, she has a sense of the history of the world about her, the way she pulls thoughts together, and also she's a storytelling legend in my book, And if you ever go on to TED Talks to hear her, I think you'll find the same thing. She's written one amazing book, Women on Top, Willful Blindness, which has a whole new aspect to it, and The Naked Truth. And she's been good enough to come here from Bath today to speak with us. So may I ask you to welcome Dr. Margaret Heffernan.
Thank you very much. What a lot of fun to be in a room full of super smart, super ambitious women who are going to make the world a better place. Many, many years ago, more years ago than I like to think, I was running my first business here in the UK, and it represented independent film and TV producers. And one of the things that we did is we negotiated the contracts between producers and all of the labor unions that go to make film and TV programs. And these came around on a regular cycle, and the time came up for us to negotiate the deal with the electricians union. And we knew this was going to be pretty tough. I was new in the job. And the head of the union phoned me up and said, well, we don't know each other. Before all this gets started formally, why don't we have lunch together? What an excellent idea, I thought. So it was his call, it was his date. We met in a Chinese restaurant in Soho, and he ordered the lunch. And as I sat there making small talk, all these dishes started to arrive. There were duck's tongues and chicken's feet and various other body parts. And as I watched this, I thought, I know exactly what's going on here. This is a test. This is a test to see how tough I am. And boy, did you pick the wrong girl. Because my mother brought me up to eat what you're served. And so I sat there and I ate all of this disgusting food. And he definitely went away daunted. And I used to tell that story frequently, with quite a lot of pride, really. Anyway, flash forward, a very long time, 10 years later, I was running tech companies in the US. And I had had a son, and then I just had a daughter, and I was on my way flying to the West Coast. And almost the only time I ever got to think was really on planes, and I was staring out of the window, and I was thinking, I wonder when my daughter has children, if she has children, I wonder how she'll describe her mother. And I thought about that Chinese meal, and I thought, well, she'll probably say, my mother was really tough. And she won't be wrong. My mother was really tough. And I really didn't like it very much. I thought, that's it? That's what I am? And it was a real shock to me and a huge wake-up call. And I replayed in my mind that lunch in the Chinese restaurant, and I thought, Margaret, you are an idiot. You shouldn't have eaten all this disgusting food. You were just playing his game because you didn't have one of your own. You could have put your hand up and said, actually, could I have some namby-pamby chicken and cashew nuts, please? But you didn't. You just went along. You just went along and showed this guy, this tough guy, that you could be a tough guy too. And suddenly I thought, that's why work is so hard right now. I'm running a tech company. We're building technology the world has never seen before. Everybody is on the bleeding edge, and you're trying to be something you're not. You're trying to be something, not only that you're not, but that hopefully is history, and you're trying to make the future. You better find a better way to lead now or you're toast. And it was an absolute epiphany for me. It made me realize that I had to change how I worked, how I thought about work, how I thought about myself, and how I thought about everybody around me. And that actually, I needed to find a way to be a leader that was not a male model, wasn't an antique male model, but that was mine and that was female. In the words of Hannah Arendt, the wonderful German philosopher who wrote, "The question is not as for Hamlet to be or not to be, but whether or not to belong." And I thought, I don't want to belong to the past. I want to belong to the future. I want to belong to a future of women who don't lead just by being the toughest guy in the room. It was a moment on that plane that changed my life. It changed the business. It made us wildly more successful. It made me wildly more successful. It was my moment of liberation. And I think still, and I think even more after Me Too, the challenge for all of us is not to fit in, but to stand out. The job for all of us is to dig deep into ourselves, to be not what other people want us to be, not what guys want us to be, not what pleases other people, but to find in ourselves what is unique and strong and honest. I spend a lot of time today working with huge institutions, every one of which is a mess. Whether it's governments, whether it's banks, whether it's multinational corporations, they are all in a mess, and secretly they all know it. And one reason they're all in a mess is because they're full of people trying to be something that they're not. And I think the great hope for women is that we've been fighting this battle a long time. And we know that the challenge isn't to keep the past going, but to create a future that looks like us, that sounds like us, that supports us, and in supporting us, supports everybody. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Margaret. I'm afraid that you won't have a chance to talk to her because she's having to rush off, but I think you'll all agree that was very powerful stuff and something that we can all think about when we get home tonight. Now we come to the prizes, and I have to call upon Catherine to help with the raffle and to find out just who's going to win what. And Mel is going to be helping with that process. So if you'd like to get your raffle tickets out, and we'll see who's going to carry off the prizes.
Hello, and thank you for joining us again. I'm joined by Sandy from ZPG, and she is going to give us some brief thoughts on what her experience was of IWD.
Thank you so much. For me, today was such an amazing celebration. The whole week has had, for me, lots of events about International Women's Day. And to have this culmination today with Angela Morton, this is the second time I've been to this lunch. And there's such a wide variety of people that are here, and it's just truly inspirational. The speakers were incredible. I want to have at least all of them to learning lunches at ZPG. There's so much for us to learn and celebrate.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And if there is going to be one thing you take away from today, what will it be, do you think?
I think it will be about having the mountains and the pinnacles, and when you get to one you think you can't go any further and you could always go further. And also the fact that we need to be honest about how we look at ourselves and how we celebrate women, and to really understand that what we are is fantastic and that we all feel the same way, and that we together can be really successful.
Well, I can't say it any better than that. Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, and we're back again, and I am joined by Antonia from Sutton, and she is very kindly going to share with us some thoughts.
I thought it was great, very inspirational. I think the speakers were amazing. Like, I'm not that interested in rugby, but Catherine was amazing. Yeah, really enjoyable day, and I'd love to come again next year.
What was it that Catherine said that particularly resonated with you?
I think it was just her, she's very motivated. I liked her analogy about the mountains, just how she carried on going, and just sort of saw where she ended up in her career, and she's amazing. She did a great job, and yeah, she's a very inspirational person.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
Hello, back again, and I'm joined by Charlotte. Charlotte, where are you from again?
I'm from a company called IHS Towers, and we build telecoms towers all across sub-Saharan Africa. So based in Nigeria, Rwanda, Zambia, Cote d'Ivoire and Cameroon. So very international company.
Wow, that is very international.
Yeah, absolutely.
And did you enjoy today?
I absolutely loved today. It was really empowering. I'm going to go back to the office on Monday with a real sense of pride and respect for my female workers.
I absolutely love that. Who was your favourite speaker?
My favourite speaker was Catherine. I'm a true sports fan, and to see a woman up there who has won the cap for England 50 times, who has played, as she described it, for her county, for the region, for England, it is amazing. And when you apply that to a business world, it's fantastic, because you know the sky's the limit.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I think what I found so inspirational as well is that she hasn't just been and done that and played for her country. She's actually taken that, moved on and applied it somewhere else.
Absolutely. She's not just thought, okay, that's the end of my career, it's over. She's thought, what can I do after that? And I think that's what we should all strive to do. It's not just a case of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's, what can I do after that? How can I apply that? How can I get better? And to see her speaking and to see how funny she was, how witty, how well-spoken she was, it's absolutely amazing.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't believe how beautifully she presented herself.
Absolutely, yeah. And I also love Joe's speak as well, because I actually, embarrassingly, am old enough. I read Sugar. I was there.
Me too.
I was in the height of Sugar. I used to read Sugar magazine. Used to read all the embarrassing stories and the makeup tips and the whatnots. And so to see her and think, oh my God, she's an actual proper businesswoman, whereas there I was X amount of years ago at 12.
Too many.
Yeah. Thinking, this is it, this is what I aspire to, and she's there, and she's at the forefront, and she's leading, and she's developing, and I had no idea that she'd come from Australia, and she'd had to waitress, and had to bartend, and had to go through all that to get her ideal job.
Proper grafting.
Yeah, and it's so reassuring, because, you know, often at times of our lives, we can't always go straight into the career that we want, but it is there. If you work hard enough, if you put the hours in, it's fantastic to know the opportunities are there.
Absolutely. I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for having me.
Next year.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I am joined this time by two of our very own, Nikki Langworthy and Lauren Pearce. Guys, what did you think of today?
Oh, we loved it, didn't we? We've had such a good time. It's been an amazing atmosphere. The speakers were incredible, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I think It's been such a fantastic event to bring everyone together, and all of our clients have really, really enjoyed it. Also, the speeches have just been really empowering and really inspirational, and hearing different people's journeys to success has just been a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah. Favourite speaker?
I think we both agree, don't we? It's Catherine Spencer.
Absolutely loved
that
her.
together.
Yeah,
I was like,
Catherine Spencer.
She was just brilliant. Her speech was so inspiring, really well written and everything, but also just the way she just completely had the room engaged the whole time. Everybody was just listening to every single word she said. She was funny. Yeah. She was brilliant, wasn't she?
Yeah, and I think it's quite it's not a unique story, but it's something fairly different, that like women in sport is something that's so kind of it's not very recognised.
So way to go still, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when she explained that story about being at Twickenham and representing the country for women's rugby, it's just something quite unique. So I think it was something that I'd not heard before, and I haven't heard that story, and I thought it was wonderful. Yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more. And guys, okay, one thing you're going to do differently. Monday morning, you walk into the office. What's going to change for you?
I'm joining a rugby team. That's what I'm doing. I don't know about you. I love it.
I'm going to take Jo Elvin's advice and do the best I can do on that day, and not see everything as a challenge. Do as much as I possibly can do on one single day.
Okay.
I think that is so brilliantly well said, guys. Thank you so much for coming up here. And yeah, this has been a great experience, enjoyed by everyone, I think.
Thank you.
And now I am so lucky to be joined by one of our incredibly inspirational speakers, Elizabeth Hartley-Brewer, who I was just saying to her just now, I took so much from that talk because I'm a parent of 2 young children, and it does relate to the wider society as a whole. So I really thank you so much for joining us today. What did you think about it?
Well, I thought the day was wonderful. I think it's especially brilliant that the day happens in this year in particular for the 100th anniversary of the vote. It makes it incredibly powerful. And I think we do need International Women's Day every year, because we do need to remember what has been achieved, and we do need to reflect on what there still is to achieve as well.
100%. And we had 3 other speakers aside from your wonderful self. Did you take any particular messages from the other speakers?
Yes, I think I really like what Jo Elvis said about exploiting the moment and just doing the best for yourself in that moment, and you never know what's going to happen from that. And I think that you know, we in our society, we're so focused on success and being brilliant and being beautiful and so on. It often constrains us. It often holds us back from even trying, because we're not going to achieve. But actually, we all have such wealth of talent and individuality. You know, it's our individual take on the world, and we're all individuals. We all have something to give, and you have to believe in that.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, even practicing for today, one of my colleagues said, you're not meant to be perfect. It's okay to be fallible, to get things wrong. And I think there is so much pressure to be the perfect mother, the perfect housewife, the perfect employee, you know, the perfect business owner, the perfect author. And actually, it's okay to take a step back and go, you know, it is just seizing the moment and doing the best I can at any given time.
Yes, I mean, it's taken me quite a long time to achieve that, in fact. I wouldn't say I'm the most horrific perfectionist at all, but I have realised over the years, maybe it's the social context, that it's been creeping up on me. And I have to say to myself, you know, I've written enough articles, and they've been printed. I've done enough talks, and I've been invited back. Why am I doubting myself? Why don't I just think it's good enough? You know, in my speech, I talked about good enough parenting. I talked about good enough success. All we have to do is to think about being good enough, because most people out there aren't demanding from us what we're demanding of ourselves.
But do you think there is also the counter-argument of, by continually striving to do better and to be more, we reach heights that perhaps we wouldn't be able to otherwise?
Yes, of course. And Catherine is a case in point today, you know, the captaining the English rugby team. And it's been a dilemma for me reflecting on this, because, you know, the amazing musicians, the amazing gymnasts, the amazing tennis players, they wouldn't be where they are had their parents not been on their shoulders, on their backs, they give their lives to what
Huge
they're doing.
sacrifices, yeah.
Huge sacrifices. But I just think that that's okay. But so many people, so many children growing up try on that track and don't get there. And then there's quite a lot of mental health difficulties when they fail, when especially, you know, we know now about the football, the Colts teams in the football clubs, and that kids who then don't make it to the next layer up are destroyed.
Absolutely.
And there's no support for them either. So I think if it were me, I would not push my child into that, because there's other things in life. There are other things in life, and so much gets cut out with this kind of
Pressure.
focus on the best.
100%. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh.
It's been such a treat to have you with us.
Oh, thank
and
you
I
very
hope
much.
you'll come again next year.
Oh, well, I hope so too.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Maggie, thank you for joining us today. Did you enjoy today's speakers?
Yeah, actually, it was an amazing insight into such a wide cross-section of activities that women have undertaken in such a short period, actually, if you look at what the women are talking about. It was amazing.
Good. And who resonated with you particularly?
I would think Catherine Spencer in particular.
Okay,
really did.
tell us why. I think she's getting a lot of airtime today.
Well, I think it's partly because being a young girl myself who was into things that weren't considered to be girly, it really resonated with me, that connection of her talking about something that is such a male-dominated sport, and it's still very much, even though, like when she talked about running out onto the pitch to the wild crowd of 6 people, it's like that tragedy that it's still not as widely seen as being up there at a professional level, like with the men, as it should be.
Absolutely. And I understand that you are plugging your book here today, so use this opportunity. Tell us a bit about it.
Okay, so I've got my book Up the Ladder in a Skirt here today.
Maggie speaking next year, just so you all know.
And what the book is all about is it's about being a female leader in male-dominated fields. It has a lot of advice in it on how to actually better yourself, do exercises to help you actually take those steps up the leadership ladder. And it really looks at the different industries through interviews with lots of women within the book as well. So it's practical as well as full of advice, which is, you know, a lovely thing for people to actually have there just as something to keep beside your bed at night.
So do you think that IWD still has a relevant place today?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to come to the day where I say that it doesn't.
Absolutely.
And I said this last year when I was speaking to Forbes, and I said it in a post yesterday, that my hope is that one day I'll wake up on the 8th of March and there won't be an International Women's Day because
it'll be every day.
Because it will be every day. It will become an everyday thing, and we won't be talking about the female CEO or the female rugby player or whatever. It'll just be on your actual merits by the person's name, as it is for males already.
Absolutely. No, I think very soundly said. Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you more next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
That's brilliant. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So we are joined by Catherine Spencer. Catherine, welcome. Thank you so much for speaking today. Your name's come up a lot. So many people have mentioned that everything that you said resonated with them. Now, assuming that we aren't filled with a room of rugby players, what do you think it was that you said that rang true with so many people in the room today?
I think, you know, we're all here and we're all ambitious women, and yeah, I went on to play rugby for England, but really all I did was just go step by step by step, little steps, just looking up, just a little step. And I think it's just making something quite cool, playing rugby for your country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seemingly quite ordinary and quite normal and quite accessible to everyone, I think.
Absolutely. And so having listened to everyone today, do you think that International Women's Day still has a reason for being? Do you think it's still relevant?
I do, actually, and I think it's something that's sort of grown and developed and evolved over the years, and probably means something different to many different countries around the world. But I think actually for young girls growing up and for women like us, I think it's really important to hear stories about what women are doing and hearing positive stories, actually. And we talk about this term role model, whether we like it or not. Actually, we gain confidence through the experience of what other women have done.
Absolutely.
And we see someone's done something that, I can do that as well.
So you think role models still play a part in empowering young women?
Yeah, I really do. I think it's really important.
Who was yours growing up?
I knew that question was coming. Actually, probably when I was growing up, I was sporty and I like sport, and the main female athlete that was on our televisions was Sally Gunnell, who was an Olympic hurdler and won the Olympics, and I used to think she had really cool hair, and I was just like, so I thought she was kind of like my sporting heroine, if you like, when I was growing up. And now today, obviously, there's so many more female athletes on our televisions, but it's really important to have someone, I think, who inspires you. They might not be famous, they might be a family member or something like that, but really important.
And tell everyone who's watching, hopefully live, a little bit about your book.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for doing that. So I'm writing a book, Mud Mall Mascara. Mud Mall Mascara.
Okay, got it.
So you can play rugby and you can want to put your mascara on at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's also a book about retiring and the challenges of retiring and trying to take on a new goal. It's also about not winning World Cups and the challenge of that, and a little bit of a light-hearted look as well at the struggles of love through my life.
Brilliant.
So
brilliant.
It's a little bit of everything.
So
and something
relatable for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And retiring, I think, is quite a key thing for sports people, male or female. Have you found that women have supported you in your next career, being entrepreneurial and doing your next thing?
They have, but I have to absolutely say that lots of men have supported me as well.
Excellent, that's good to hear.
And actually, more people have wanted to help me than I've realised. And to start with, setting up my own business, inspiring women, I found it hard to accept help because I thought maybe if other people were helping me, it meant that I wasn't strong and I couldn't do it myself. And I think that's a familiar story for a lot of people. And once you accept that actually people do want to help you, you can accept that, and then later on in life, you can help people yourself as well, and it's a nice cycle.
Absolutely. So a lesson in being humble in the reception of help, and then you're able to give it back. Thank you so much, everyone.
So much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm back again, Olivia Huckstep, and I am joined today by Charlotte Rutledge and Ashley Stenning. Guys, thank you for coming along today. What did you think?
We thought it was absolutely brilliant. I feel extremely empowered. Don't know about you.
Empowered, so empowered. Like, all about the women.
It was really, really good. Great speeches, great talks. I feel very empowered.
Awesome, that is the name of the game. And who was your favourite speaker today?
So, personally, for me, my favourite speaker was the rugby player, Charlotte Spencer. Catherine Spencer, sorry. Catherine Spencer. I felt like she was very interactive with the audience. I felt the fact that rugby was her hobby and she was working alongside her hobby, but that was her main thing. That was the thing that made her big, and it was a hobby. She wasn't getting paid for it. That was absolutely amazing. And then she used that to then create her own business. I just thought, for me, she was the most inspirational person, so she was my favourite.
I agree. Like, she's still quite young. She wasn't getting paid for what she was doing. Like, it was a genuine passion rather than like what her career was. I just think it's like truly inspirational that she was doing that alongside her career as well. Like, it's very like inspirational.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, I think a few people have said how amazing that you can go from such an amazing sports career, take that, and then continue on with it, keep the momentum.
Yeah.
So Monday morning, you rock up at work at 8:30, 9 o'clock. Do you think you're going to take anything away from this and apply it to your day jobs?
100%, especially the industry that we work in. I mean, although there are a lot of women consultants in what we work in, so we work in economic consultancy. And while there are a lot of women economics, we work in the admin team, and the admin team are mainly made up of women. And I think that we can go in there on Monday and feel like, hang on a minute, while we're admin and not economics, we've got this. We can do this.
I think it really helped us just to prove ourselves that we can. We have this, like, we're women and we're the best. We can do this.
100%. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope to see you again next year.
100%. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Angela, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for everything you've already done today. Have you enjoyed today?
I've had a ball. It's just been fantastic. I don't think we've ever had any more interesting speakers.
Good.
We certainly haven't had such a range of, say, 360-degree attitudes and lifestyles, but all the values were very much held in common. I think it was all very much responded to by the audience, and by, of course, all our offices abroad. We were getting lots of tweets back from our offices in Paris, in Brussels, Amsterdam, Geneva, all over. And I think they were all saying the same thing about the different speakers, that they were just really responding to the sense that they were people who wanted to do things, do them better, go further.
Absolutely.
I think people took a lot of confidence. They borrowed the confidence of the speakers, and
Yeah.
they were looking at how they could make it work for them.
Brilliant. And so what are you going to change or take away as a result of today?
Me, personally,
Yeah.
I want to do the same thing again next year, better.
Brilliant. Okay.
And how is it going to be better? It's going to be better because we can't have better speakers, because we're going to have, we'll have better practice at Facebook. It's the first time we've done it, so we'll be a bit better than
Sorry,
that.
everyone. This is our first try.
So we'll be better at that. But otherwise, we're just going to go on doing it each year and doing it better.
Brilliant. And so you still firmly believe that there's a place for International Women's Day and that it's still relevant?
I think it's never been more relevant for having female role models.
Absolutely.
People for every age group of women, because women are going on having different careers and changes of careers at the age of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, dear Lord, 70.
Yeah.
So it goes. And to have people up there on stage, all these different ages, all doing it and reinventing themselves, I think is a very important psychological prop for everyone, to have the living evidence.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Angela, thank you ever so much, and thank you to all of you. Thank you ever so much. Bye.
Bye.